The rain fell relentlessly, a heavy curtain of droplets cascading onto the dimly lit streets of a suburban New York neighborhood. Amara Johnson tightened her coat around her as she walked briskly home, her feet splashing through puddles. The shift at Benson's convenience store had been grueling, like every other night, but she couldn't afford to complain. The paycheck was the lifeline for her family, a widowed mother and two younger siblings who depended on her. Her earbuds buzzed faintly with the melody of an old R&B song as she turned a corner. The usual route was quiet except for the occasional whoosh of passing cars, their headlights carving brief, fleeting paths through the darkness. But something caught her eye. On the far side of the sidewalk, near the entrance to a closed diner, lay a figure, still and unmoving. The streetlight above flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the scene. Amara froze, her heart pounding. Was it a setup? Stories of robberies and scams played in her mind. She scanned the street. Empty. Just the rain and the faint hum of electricity. Her instincts screamed to walk away, to avoid trouble, yet something kept her rooted to the spot. The figure was older, a man. Judging by his stature, his disheveled suit clung to him, soaked through by the rain. His chest rose and fell, albeit weakly. "Damn it," she muttered, glancing around once more. No one else was coming. No one else cared. Gritting her teeth, she approached cautiously. The man's face came into view, pale, wrinkled, and slack with unconsciousness. He looked like he could be someone's grandfather. Amara knelt down, shaking his shoulder gently. "Sir, can you hear me?" No response. Her phone trembled in her wet hand as she dialed 911. Her voice firm despite her fear. "There's a man on the ground. I think he needs help." When the ambulance arrived, Amara followed it to the nearby hospital. She didn't have to. She knew that, but something about the man tugged at her. Maybe it was the frailty in his face, or the overwhelming thought that no one else would care if she didn't. The was a cacophony of beeping machines, rushing nurses, and anxious relatives. Amara sat in the corner, shivering in her damp clothes. As the man was wheeled away, a nurse approached her, clipboard in hand. "Are you family?" "No," Amara said, shaking her head. "I just found him on the street." The nurse frowned. "We'll need someone to take responsibility for his admission. Do you know if he has insurance?" Amara hesitated. I don't know." Without thinking twice, she handed over the little money she had in her wallet to cover the immediate costs, her chest tightening as she realized how much this would set her back. Her mind raced with worry, rent, food, and her siblings' school expenses. But she couldn't walk away. Not now. Hours passed. Amara dozed in a stiff waiting room chair until a doctor emerged, his expression calm but serious. "Are you the one who brought him in?" the doctor asked. Amara nodded. "How is he?" "He's stable now. Dehydration and exhaustion, mostly. It's a good thing you brought him in when you did." The doctor paused. "He's awake and asking for you." Her brows furrowed. "For me?" She followed the doctor to a private room. The man lay propped up on a hospital bed, an oxygen tube nestled beneath his nose. His eyes, sharp despite his frail condition, fixed on her as she entered. "You," his voice was gravelly, barely above a whisper. "You saved my life." Amara shrugged awkwardly. "It was nothing. Anyone would have done it." "No," he said firmly, his gaze piercing. "Not anyone." The conversation was brief. Amara learned his name, Charles Harrison, and that he had been out on business before collapsing. What she didn't learn was why he seemed so intent on her staying. His gratitude felt heavier than the situation warranted, as if there were more to his story. When she finally left the hospital that night, drenched once again by the unyielding rain, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that her life had taken an unexpected turn. Something about that man, his presence, his words, lingered with her, like the faint echo of a storm yet to come. As she walked home, her phone buzzed with a message from her younger sister. "Mom's feeling better. Don't worry about us." Amara sighed in relief but couldn't help feeling the weight of her own worries. The small apartment they lived in was cramped. The bills were mounting, and now she had spent money she didn't have. Yet, amidst the storm of her thoughts, there was a flicker of hope. She had done the right thing, and deep down, she sensed that the right thing, however costly, would always lead to something greater. Little did she know, her small act of kindness would soon thrust her into a world far removed from her own, filled with opportunity, betrayal, and the fight for justice. Amara's life slipped back into its regular rhythm after that stormy night. Or so she thought. Days passed, and the memory of the frail man she had helped at the hospital faded into the background of her daily struggles. Benson's convenience store demanded her energy. Her family needed her time. And her dreams were buried beneath a relentless wave of responsibilities. But the unexpected had a way of finding her. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and Amara had just returned home after a double shift. The apartment she shared with her mother and siblings was modest, worn carpets, peeling wallpaper, and furniture that had seen better days. She had barely kicked off her shoes when a sharp knock at the door startled her. Her younger brother, Jamal, poked his head out from his room. "You expecting someone?" he asked. "No," Amara replied, cautiously making her way to the door. She peeked through the peephole and saw a sharply dressed man in a tailored suit. His expression was unreadable, but his posture was commanding. Amara hesitated before opening the door a crack. "Can I help you?" The man smiled politely. "Miss Johnson, my name is Daniel Reed. I'm Mr. Charles Harrison's assistant. He asked me to find you." Her mind raced. Charles Harrison? She hadn't heard from him since that night at the hospital. Why was he sending someone now? Her stomach knotted with a mix of curiosity and unease. Okay. What does he want?" she asked, her tone wary. "Mr. Harrison would like to meet with you," Daniel said, handing her a sleek business card. "He's very grateful for what you did and would like to offer you an opportunity." "An opportunity?" she echoed, frowning. "What kind of opportunity?" "Let's just say it's a chance to change your life." Amara's first instinct was to decline. She didn't trust vague promises, especially from strangers. But something about Daniel's earnest tone, and the mention of her life changing, made her pause. "When?" she asked, cautiously. "Tomorrow," Daniel replied, his smile widening. "I'll send a car to pick you up. Don't worry about a thing." The following day, Amara found herself standing in front of a towering glass building in downtown Manhattan. Harrison Enterprises gleamed in the morning sun, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the world Amara knew. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored glass, simple jeans, a clean but plain shirt, and sneakers that had seen better days. She felt out of place. Daniel greeted her in the lobby and escorted her to an elevator. As they ascended, Amara's heart raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here. The polished floors, the well-dressed employees bustling about, the air of affluence, it was overwhelming. When the elevator doors opened, Amara was led into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Charles Harrison sat behind an elegant mahogany desk, his presence commanding but not intimidating. He looked healthier than he had in the hospital, though his sharp blue eyes still carried a hint of fatigue. "Miss Johnson," Charles greeted warmly, rising to his feet. "Thank you for coming." Amara nodded, unsure of how to respond. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes." Charles gestured for her to sit. "I owe you a debt of gratitude. If it weren't for you, I might not be here today." Amara shifted uncomfortably. "It was nothing. I just did what anyone would have done." "On the contrary," Charles said firmly, "many people wouldn't have stopped. You showed compassion when it mattered most." Charles leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I've learned a bit about you, Amara. You're hardworking, resourceful, and fiercely loyal to your family. Those qualities are rare, and I believe they deserve recognition." Amara raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "I want to offer you a job at Harrison Enterprises," Charles said, his tone earnest. "It won't be glamorous at first, but it's a foot in the door. I believe in giving people a chance, and I think you have the potential to do great things." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Amara's mind raced. A job here? It felt unreal, like stepping into a world she wasn't meant to inhabit. But the weight of her reality, the long hours at the convenience store, the unending bills, tugged at her. This could be her chance. "What's the catch?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. Charles chuckled. "No catch. Just hard work. The rest is up to you." Amara started the following week in the company's delivery department. The job was simple enough, coordinating shipments and managing records, but the environment was far from welcoming. Her new coworkers eyed her with thinly veiled suspicion, their whispers trailing her wherever she went. "Who is she? I heard the boss brought her in himself. Must be nice to have connections. Probably doesn't even know what she's doing." Amara gritted her teeth and kept her head down, determined not to let the gossip get to her. One of her colleagues, Rachel Walker, a sharp-tongued veteran of the department, seemed particularly hostile. "Let me guess," Rachel said one afternoon, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Daddy Harrison's little charity case?" Amara looked up from her desk, her gaze steady. "No, just someone willing to work hard." Rachel scoffed but didn't press further. Amara could feel the challenge in the air, but she refused to rise to it. She had faced worse in her life. Meanwhile, Ethan Mitchell, Charles's ambitious nephew, watched Amara from afar with growing irritation. His uncle's decision to hire her had ruffled feathers, especially among those who believed in the sanctity of corporate hierarchy. For Ethan, it was personal. He had plans for Harrison Enterprises, and he couldn't afford a wildcard like Amara disrupting them. "She doesn't belong here," Ethan muttered to Rachel during a private meeting, "and I'll make sure she doesn't stay." The tension around Amara's presence grew daily, but she remained focused. She didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: she wouldn't let anyone take this opportunity away from her. The first week at Harrison Enterprises was a gauntlet for Amara. The shiny veneer of the corporate world quickly gave way to a labyrinth of unspoken rules, cliques, and veiled hostilities. Each day, she walked into the sleek office with her head held high, her resolve intact, but beneath her calm exterior, she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Her new role in the delivery department wasn't glamorous, but it was an opportunity, one she wasn't about to squander. However, proving herself wouldn't come easy. Rachel Walker, the self-proclaimed queen of the department, made her disdain for Amara painfully clear. She had worked her way up from the bottom and took pride in her position, seeing Amara as an affront to her efforts. "Amara," Rachel called one morning, her tone overly sweet, as she dropped a stack of files onto Amara's desk. "Since you're so eager to prove yourself, why don't you handle these shipping errors from last quarter? Oh, and they need to be fixed by noon." Amara glanced at the files, her heart sinking. The stack was thick, a jumbled mess of incomplete reports and outdated records. It was busywork, designed to frustrate her and waste her time. "Sure thing," Amara replied evenly, refusing to take the bait. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By noon, she had not only corrected the errors but streamlined the filing system. When Rachel checked her work, expecting mistakes, her jaw tightened with annoyance. "Well, don't get used to praise," Rachel said, brushing off Amara's effort. "You still have a lot to learn." Amara found a quiet ally in Lisa Nguyen, a soft-spoken logistics analyst who worked 2 cubicles down. Lisa admired Amara's perseverance and occasionally slipped her helpful tips or a kind word. "You're doing great," Lisa whispered one day after noticing Rachel's latest attempt to sabotage Amara with impossible deadlines. "Don't let her get to you." "Thanks, Lisa," Amara said with a small smile. "I'll be fine. I've dealt with worse." Despite the hostile environment, Amara managed to secure small victories. Her work ethic and attention to detail began to catch the attention of other employees, though it also fueled resentment among her detractors. Meanwhile, Ethan Mitchell was watching Amara closely. From his corner office, he tracked her progress with a growing sense of irritation. His uncle's faith in this unpolished newcomer baffled him. And worse, it threatened his carefully laid plans to consolidate power within the company. "Rachel's not doing enough," Ethan muttered during a meeting with his confidant, Stephen Marsh, a junior manager eager to climb the corporate ladder. "She's trying," Stephen replied, "but that girl's tough. She's not folding like we thought she would." Ethan's lips curled into a smirk. "Then we'll make it harder. Let's see how tough she really is." A few days later, Amara was assigned her first major task, overseeing the coordination of a high-profile shipment for a key client. It was an opportunity to prove herself, or fail spectacularly. Rachel and Ethan saw to it that the odds were stacked against her. On the morning of the shipment, Amara arrived early, double-checking every detail. The cargo was sensitive, and any delay could damage the company's relationship with the client. As she reviewed the schedule, a sense of unease prickled at her. An hour before the trucks were set to leave, a problem emerged. One of the shipments had been rerouted without her knowledge, and the client's items were missing from the manifest. Panic flashed through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. Amara quickly called Jack Thompson, a janitor who had worked at the company for years and knew the warehouse better than anyone. Jack had taken a liking to Amara, often sharing stories and advice during her breaks. "Jack, I need your help, she said, explaining the situation. Jack grinned. Don't worry, kid, we'll find it. Together, they scoured the warehouse. And within 30 minutes, they located the missing cargo, hidden in a mislabeled section. Amara suspected foul play but didn't have time to dwell on it. She got the shipment back on track just in time, earning a grudging nod of approval from her supervisor. Later that day, Lisa approached Amara with a worried expression. I heard some of the guys in logistics talking. They said the rerouting wasn't an accident. Amara frowned. What do you mean? They think someone did it on purpose, to make you look bad. Amara's chest tightened. She had suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed made her anger flare. Who would go to such lengths to sabotage her? She didn't have to think long before Ethan's smirking face came to mind. Despite the challenges, Amara's success with the shipment didn't go unnoticed. Charles Harrison himself called her into his office the next day. I heard about your quick thinking, he said, a rare smile softening his stern features. Well done. Keep this up, and you'll go far. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, Amara replied, keeping her voice steady even as pride swelled in her chest. I won't let you down. As she left his office, she caught a glimpse of Ethan in the hallway. His eyes met hers, cold and calculating, and for the first time, Amara realized the depth of the opposition she faced. This wasn't just workplace rivalry, it was a battle for survival. Back at her desk, Amara replayed Lisa's warning in her mind. If someone had sabotaged the shipment, it wouldn't be the last time they tried to undermine her. She needed to be ready. For now, she would focus on doing her job, proving herself through hard work and resilience. But deep down, she knew she couldn't fight this battle alone. She would need allies, strategy, and a will as unyielding as the rain that had started her journey. Amara's success with the high-profile shipment was a step forward, but it also marked the beginning of a subtle yet deliberate campaign to undermine her. Ethan Mitchell, quietly furious at her ability to rise above the challenges he'd set, decided it was time to escalate his efforts. Amara wasn't just an inconvenience anymore, she was a threat. The tension in the office was palpable. Every morning as Amara stepped into the delivery department, she could feel the stares and hear the murmurs. Her quick success had drawn attention, but not all of it was positive. Look at her, Rachel muttered to a coworker, loud enough for Amara to hear. She thinks she's untouchable because the boss likes her. Amara ignored the comment, keeping her focus on the task at hand, but the hostility weighed on her. A constant reminder that she was walking a tightrope in a world that wasn't hers. One afternoon, Amara received an email from Stephen Marsh, a junior manager aligned with Ethan. The subject line read, "Urgent, approval needed for client proposal." The email contained a long list of documents, many of which seemed unrelated to her role, and a deadline that gave her less than 2 hours to respond. Amara frowned, her instincts tingling. Something about the request felt off. But she couldn't afford to ignore it. She dove into the documents, meticulously reviewing each one. Halfway through, she found a glaring discrepancy, figures that didn't match the company's standard rates. Her gut told her it was a trap. If she approved the proposal without noticing the errors, it could reflect poorly on her. If she didn't respond in time, it would be seen as incompetence. Either way, she would lose. Amara took a deep breath, her mind racing. She decided to flag the discrepancies and send the proposal back with a polite but firm request for clarification. It was a risky move, but she wasn't about to be cornered. Later that day, Ethan stormed into Stephen's office, his face a mask of controlled anger. She caught it? Ethan demanded. Stephen nodded, fidgeting under his boss's glare. Yeah, sent it back with corrections. Ethan clenched his fists. This girl doesn't know her place. She thinks she can just outsmart me? Stephen hesitated. What do you want to do? Ethan's lips curled into a cold smile. We make her stumble, and when she does, we'll make sure she never gets back up. Meanwhile, Amara's determination continued to earn her quiet allies. Jack Thompson, the janitor who had helped her in the warehouse, became a steady presence, offering her wisdom from years of observing the company's inner workings. Don't let them rattle you, kid, Jack said one evening as they chatted in the break room. People like Ethan? They're all bark until you stand your ground. Amara smiled faintly. It's not just him. It feels like everyone's watching me, waiting for me to fail. They are, Jack admitted, but you've got something they don't, heart. And people notice that, even if they don't say it. Lisa Nguyen, too, began to step up, subtly defending Amara in meetings and helping her navigate the unspoken rules of the office. "You're doing great," Lisa said one day, sliding Amara a neatly printed guide on company protocols. "And I'm not the only one who sees it." Ethan's next move was bolder. He orchestrated a shipment delay for one of the company's most important clients, ensuring that the paperwork would lead back to Amara. The plan was meticulous, emails forged to appear as though she had authorized the delay, records tampered with to make it look intentional. When the client's complaint came in, the department erupted in chaos. Amara was summoned to a meeting with her supervisor, Rachel, and several other department heads. "Do you have any explanation for this?" Rachel asked, her tone sharp as she slid the forged email across the table. Amara's heart raced as she read the message. It had her name and email signature, but she had never written it. "This isn't mine," she said firmly. Looking up, "I didn't send this." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Then how do you explain it?" "I don't know," Amara replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. "But I can prove it wasn't me." Amara worked late that night, poring over email logs and system records. With help from Lisa, who had some connections in IT, they traced the source of the forged email to a computer registered under Stephen Marsh's account. Lisa's eyes widened as she pointed at the screen. "This proves you didn't do it. But, do you think Ethan's involved?" Amara hesitated. She didn't have concrete evidence linking Ethan to the sabotage, but her instincts told her he was the mastermind. "It's not just Stephen," she said quietly. "This is bigger than him." The next morning, Amara presented her findings to Charles Harrison. She laid out the evidence methodically, her nerves hidden behind a calm exterior. Charles listened intently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "You've shown remarkable resilience, Miss Johnson," he said, "and a keen eye for detail. I'll handle this situation personally." His words were reassuring, but Amara knew the battle was far from over. Ethan wouldn't stop, and now she was certain she was at the center of his sights. Back in the delivery department, the atmosphere had shifted. News of Amara's vindication spread quickly, silencing some of the whispers but deepening the animosity in others. Rachel avoided her gaze, her usual sarcasm tempered by something that resembled respect, or perhaps fear. Ethan, however, remained outwardly calm. He watched her with the same calculating eyes, his smile sharper than ever. "You may have won this round," Ethan murmured to himself as he sat alone in his office. "But the game's far from over." Amara barely had time to savor her small victory before the stakes were raised yet again. Ethan, humiliated by her ability to expose his sabotage, decided it was time to move beyond the shadows. If he couldn't quietly oust her, he would orchestrate a spectacle big enough to force her out of the company, and crush her spirit in the process. It started with an envelope. One morning, as Amara sifted through her inbox, she found an official-looking document addressed to her. Her pulse quickened as she tore it open, revealing a formal notice of legal action. Ethan had filed a lawsuit against her, accusing her of violating company policies and intentionally causing financial harm to Harrison Enterprises. Her heart sank as she read the allegations. The document was laced with half-truths and outright lies, all aimed at painting her as reckless and untrustworthy. Ethan had even included forged evidence, likely created by Stephen Marsh, to back his claims. Amara's hands shook as she turned the pages. This wasn't just an attack on her career, it was an attack on her character. News of the lawsuit spread through the company like wildfire. Whispers followed Amara wherever she went, her coworkers' stares heavy with judgment and curiosity. "Did you hear? She's getting sued by the company. I knew she wasn't as perfect as she pretended to be. They don't just sue people for no reason. She must have done something." Even her allies seemed shaken. Lisa approached her hesitantly, her brow furrowed. "Amara, this is serious. You need to fight this." "I know," Amara said, her voice firm despite the turmoil inside her. "I'm not going to let him win." But the pressure was immense. Every day felt like walking a tightrope, with her job and reputation hanging in the balance. Desperate for help, Amara reached out to Deshaun Carter, a well-known attorney specializing in employment law. Deshaun had built his reputation fighting for workers' rights and exposing corporate corruption. And Amara hoped he could see through Ethan's lies. During their first meeting, Deshaun leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes studying her carefully. "You've got a tough fight ahead of you," he said. "This isn't just about the lawsuit. It's about power. They're trying to intimidate you into backing down." Amara met his gaze, her determination unwavering. "I'm not backing down. I need to clear my name." Deshawn nodded. "Good, because that's the only way we're going to win." As the legal battle unfolded, the case began to draw public attention. Local media picked up the story, framing it as a David and Goliath struggle, a young black woman versus a powerful corporate executive. The racial and social undertones of the case became a hot topic, with debates raging on social media and in the press. "She's being targeted because of her race," one commentator argued. "It's classic corporate discrimination, or maybe she's just not qualified." Another retorted, "People love to play the victim." Amara tried to block out the noise, but the constant scrutiny wore on her. Every word, every action was dissected, and the pressure to remain composed felt unbearable at times. Ethan, meanwhile, reveled in the chaos he had created. From his corner office, he monitored the lawsuit's impact with a satisfied smirk. "She's floundering," he told Stephen one afternoon. "This case will destroy her credibility, whether she wins or loses." "But what if she fights back?" Stephen asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "What if she finds a way to prove the evidence is fake?" "She won't," Ethan said confidently. "And even if she does, the damage will already be done. By the time this is over, no one will trust her." As the court date approached, Amara and Deshawn worked tirelessly to build their case. They gathered witnesses, combed through company records, and even enlisted Lisa to help track down inconsistencies in Ethan's evidence. One night, as Amara sat in her apartment surrounded by legal documents, her younger sister, Maya, walked in and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're going to win this," Maya said softly. "You've always fought for us. And now we're fighting for you." Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. Her family's support was a beacon in the storm, reminding her why she couldn't give up. The trial began on a gray morning, the courtroom packed with reporters, employees from Harrison Enterprises, and curious onlookers. Amara sat beside Deshawn, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as the judge called the proceedings to order. Ethan's legal team opened with a barrage of accusations, painting Amara as careless and unfit for her role. They presented forged emails and doctored records, their arguments slick and rehearsed. When it was Amara's turn, Deshawn systematically dismantled the opposition's case. He pointed out inconsistencies in the evidence, called witnesses who testified to Amara's integrity, and even presented IT records that proved the emails had been tampered with. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as each side made its case. But the turning point came when Deshawn called Jack Thompson to the stand. Jack, who had overheard a conversation between Ethan and Stephen about the forged evidence, provided a damning testimony that left the courtroom stunned. After days of heated arguments and mounting tension, the judge finally delivered the verdict. The case against Amara was dismissed, and Ethan's actions were referred for further investigation. The courtroom erupted in whispers as Amara let out a shaky breath. She had won, but the victory was bittersweet. The damage to her reputation couldn't be undone overnight, and she knew Ethan wouldn't stop until he was forced out. Back at the office, the atmosphere was different. Some coworkers congratulated Amara, while others avoided her altogether. Ethan, his confidence shaken but not broken, retreated to his office, already plotting his next move. Amara, meanwhile, resolved to keep fighting, not just for herself, but for everyone who faced injustice and silence. This battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Amara's victory in court had been a defining moment, but the aftermath was anything but celebratory. The lawsuit had left a stain on her reputation, even though the charges were dismissed. Within Harrison Enterprises, the whispers didn't fade, they simply changed their tune. "She's lucky she got off," someone muttered in the break room. "Yeah, but how long before she screws up again?" another replied. Amara heard the comments but didn't respond. She focused on her work, determined to rise above the noise. Still, the tension in the office was undeniable. Her coworkers watched her with a mix of curiosity, resentment, and unease. She had become a symbol of resilience to some and a lightning rod for controversy to others. For Ethan Mitchell, the fallout from the trial was a bitter pill to swallow. His reputation had taken a hit after Jack Thompson's testimony exposed his role in the sabotage. But Charles Harrison had stopped short of firing him. Instead, Ethan was warned to tread carefully, a reprimand that stung almost as much as the public embarrassment. "You let it go too far," Rachel Walker said to Ethan during a tense conversation in his office. "She's still here, and now she's stronger than ever. If you're not careful, she'll be your undoing." Ethan scowled, his jaw tight. "I don't need advice from you, Rachel, just watch. She'll make a mistake eventually. And when she does, I'll be ready." But Rachel's words lingered in his mind. He couldn't deny that Amara's resilience was unsettling. She had weathered everything he'd thrown at her and come out stronger. For the first time, Ethan began to question whether his usual tactics would be enough to take her down. Despite the lingering tensions, Charles Harrison remained impressed by Amara's performance under pressure. One afternoon, he called her into his office. "Miss Johnson," he began, his tone as measured as ever, "I wanted to commend you on how you handled yourself during the lawsuit. Most people would have folded under that kind of pressure." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," Amara replied, her voice steady. "I'm just trying to do my job. And you're doing it well," he said, "which is why I'm giving you a new assignment. It's more responsibility, but I believe you're ready for it." Amara's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of assignment?" "You'll be overseeing a special project," Charles explained. "A new client has approached us with a complex logistical challenge, and I need someone who can handle it. You'll be working directly with several departments, including Rachel's." The mention of Rachel made Amara hesitate. But she nodded. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Charles said, his eyes sharp with confidence. "But be prepared. This project will put you in the spotlight again, and not everyone will be rooting for you." The announcement of Amara's new assignment sent ripples through the office. Rachel, in particular, was less than thrilled. She had spent years clawing her way up the corporate ladder, only to watch someone she considered an outsider be given opportunities she had never received. But as much as Rachel resented Amara, she couldn't deny the younger woman's competence. The lawsuit had shown Rachel a side of Amara she hadn't expected: grit, intelligence, and a refusal to back down. It was a side Rachel found difficult to ignore. As the two began working together on the project, Rachel found herself in a strange position. On one hand, she wanted to see Amara fail. On the other, she couldn't help but respect her determination. Ethan, meanwhile, was far from idle. He saw Amara's new assignment as a chance to strike. If he could sabotage the project and pin the blame on her, it would be the perfect way to undermine her growing reputation. Through his network of loyalists within the company, Ethan began planting seeds of doubt. He whispered to key employees, questioning Amara's qualifications and subtly encouraging resistance to her leadership. "She's inexperienced," he told one supervisor. "If this project fails, it'll be on her, and by extension, all of us." The whispers spread quickly, creating an undercurrent of skepticism that threatened to derail Amara's efforts before they even began. Amara, sensing the resistance, began to take proactive steps. She reached out to Lisa Nguyen and Jack Thompson, who had proven to be her most reliable allies. "This project is going to be tough," Amara admitted during a late-night strategy meeting in the break room. "I need your help to make sure everything runs smoothly." "You got it," Lisa said without hesitation. "I've already started compiling data on the client's needs. We'll get ahead of this." Jack grinned. "Just point me in the right direction. You know I've got your back." With their support, Amara began building a coalition of employees who believed in the project, and in her. The first major test came when a shipment critical to the project was delayed due to a miscommunication in the warehouse. Amara immediately suspected sabotage, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. Instead, she focused on finding a solution. Working through the night, she coordinated with the client and rerouted the shipment, minimizing the delay. The effort left her exhausted but satisfied that she had averted a potential disaster. The next day, Charles Harrison called her to his office. "I heard about the delay," he said. "You handled it well." "Thank you, sir," Amara replied, though her voice betrayed her fatigue. "Be careful," Charles warned. "This project is important, but it's also a proving ground, for you and for those who want to see you fail." As the project moved forward, the stakes continued to rise. Amara knew that every step she took was being watched, every decision scrutinized. Ethan's machinations loomed in the background, a constant reminder that her position was far from secure. But Amara refused to let fear dictate her actions. She had come too far, fought too hard, to back down now, and though the challenges ahead were daunting, she knew she wasn't facing them alone. The weight of the new project bore down on Amara with each passing day. Deadlines loomed, expectations soared, and resistance within the team became more palpable. Yet, through sheer determination, she pressed forward. What she didn't know was that the project wasn't just a test of her abilities, it was a trap carefully constructed by Ethan Mitchell. It started with a discrepancy in the budget reports. Amara had been reviewing the financials late one evening when she noticed several invoices that didn't add up. The charges were significantly higher than they should have been, and some of the vendors listed weren't ones she recognized. Frowning, she flagged the anomalies and brought them to Lisa the next morning. "These numbers don't make sense," Amara said, sliding the documents across Lisa's desk. "Do you think someone made a mistake?" Lisa scanned the reports, her expression growing more serious with each line. "This isn't a mistake," she said quietly. "This looks intentional." "Intentional?" Amara repeated, her stomach sinking. "You think someone's skimming funds?" Lisa nodded grimly. "And if they are, they're using your project to cover their tracks." The discovery sent Amara down a rabbit hole of internal records and communications. With Lisa's help, she began piecing together a web of suspicious transactions and unauthorized approvals. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became that someone high up in the company was embezzling funds and using the logistical complexities of Amara's project to mask the theft. Jack Thompson, ever the vigilant observer, caught wind of their investigation and offered his insight. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened," he said during a late-night meeting in the break room. "I've seen executives get away with stuff like this before. They count on people not paying attention. But this time," Amara said firmly, "they're not getting away with it." As Amara continued her investigation, her suspicions began to point toward Ethan. The inflated invoices had been approved by Stephen Marsh, his right-hand man, and the vendors listed had connections to shell companies Ethan had used in the past. Ethan, however, remained calm and collected, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing around him. He even went out of his way to offer Amara advice during a chance encounter in the office. "You're handling a lot of responsibility for someone so new," he said, his tone laced with condescension. "Just make sure you don't take on more than you can handle." Amara forced a tight smile. "Thanks for the concern, Ethan, but I've got it under control." His smirk faltered for just a moment, but it was enough to confirm her suspicions. Ethan wasn't just aware of the embezzlement, he was orchestrating it. The tension reached a boiling point when one of the vendors implicated in the scheme contacted Amara directly, demanding payment for services that hadn't been rendered. The conversation was heated, and the vendor threatened to escalate the matter to Charles Harrison if the issue wasn't resolved immediately. Amara knew she couldn't keep the investigation under wraps any longer. She needed to bring her findings to Charles before the situation spiraled out of control. When Amara entered Charles Harrison's office, her nerves were frayed but her resolve was strong. She laid out the evidence methodically, detailing the fraudulent transactions and the connections to Ethan's network. Charles listened intently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "This is serious," he said finally. "If what you're saying is true, this goes beyond simple misconduct. It's criminal." Amara nodded. "I believe Ethan is behind it, but I don't have definitive proof yet." Charles's eyes narrowed. "Then get it, and be careful. If Ethan feels cornered, he won't hesitate to retaliate." True to Charles's warning, Ethan caught wind of Amara's investigation and wasted no time in striking back. He began spreading rumors that Amara was mishandling the project's budget, sowing doubt among her team and the company's leadership. Rachel Walker, who had been reluctantly warming to Amara, found herself caught in the crossfire. Ethan approached her directly, playing on her lingering resentment. "Do you really think she's capable of managing this project?" Ethan asked, his tone dripping with manipulation. "She's already making mistakes. If this fails, it'll reflect on all of us." Rachel hesitated but didn't respond. Deep down, she knew Ethan was playing a dangerous game, but her own frustrations made it hard to fully trust Amara. Amara, undeterred by Ethan's schemes, doubled down on her efforts to uncover the truth. With Lisa's help, She gained access to a restricted database containing company-wide financial records. What they found was explosive: a series of offshore accounts linked to Ethan's name, each tied to the embezzled funds. The evidence was damning, but Amara knew it wouldn't be enough to bring Ethan down. She needed a smoking gun, something that would leave no doubt about his guilt. The breakthrough came when Jack revealed a piece of critical information. During a routine maintenance check, he had overheard Stephen Marsh bragging to another employee about the success of their operation. Stephen mentioned a meeting. Jack said, "Tomorrow night, after hours, if you can get in there, you might find what you're looking for." Amara's heart raced. This was her chance to catch Ethan in the act. But the risks were high. If she was caught, it could spell the end of her career, or worse. The night of the meeting, Amara prepared carefully, enlisting Lisa and Jack to help her document everything. Armed with a hidden recording device, she positioned herself near the conference room where Ethan and his accomplices were gathering. As she listened to their conversation, her suspicions were confirmed. Ethan openly discussed the embezzlement scheme, his arrogance blinding him to the possibility of being overheard. Amara's pulse quickened as she captured the damning evidence. But before she could leave, one of Ethan's associates spotted her. "Hey, what are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Amara's heart leapt into her throat as the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. Amara froze, her heart pounding as Ethan's associate glared at her from the doorway. For a split second, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then Ethan spoke, his voice cold and cutting. Well, Miss Johnson, care to explain what you're doing here?" Amara swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I was looking for some missing documents," she said, keeping her tone steady. "Didn't realize this room was occupied." Ethan's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Of course, always working late, aren't you?" The tension was suffocating, but Amara held her ground. With the recording device safely tucked into her bag, she knew she had what she needed to expose Ethan's corruption. The question was how to get out without raising further suspicion. "I'll just grab my things and leave you to your meeting," Amara said, edging toward the door. Her mind raced, every instinct screaming for her to stay calm. Ethan watched her with narrowed eyes but didn't stop her. "See that you do," he said, "and Amara, next time, knock." She nodded, forcing a polite smile before slipping out of the room. The moment she was out of sight, she broke into a near run, her breaths coming in short bursts as she made her way to Lisa's desk. "It's worse than we thought," she whispered, pulling Lisa into a private office. "I've got everything." Ethan admitted to the embezzlement, and he's implicating others. Lisa's eyes widened. "What do we do now?" "We go to Charles," Amara said, "but we need to be smart about it. If Ethan finds out I recorded him, he'll do everything he can to discredit me." The following morning, Amara requested an urgent meeting with Charles Harrison. She arrived at his office with Lisa and Jack, the three of them carrying the weight of what they'd uncovered. Charles listened intently as Amara laid out the evidence, the doctored invoices, the offshore accounts, and finally, the recording of Ethan's meeting. His expression darkened with every detail. "This is damning," Charles said after a long silence. "But it's also dangerous. If Ethan feels cornered, he could lash out, not just at you, but at the company. That's why we need to act quickly." Amara said, "If we wait, he'll cover his tracks. We have to take this to the board and the authorities." Charles nodded. "Leave it with me. I'll handle the board. In the meantime, keep your heads down. Ethan can't know what's coming." Unaware of the storm brewing against him, Ethan continued to operate as though his position was secure. But subtle shifts in the office dynamics began to unsettle him. Rachel Walker, once a reliable ally, seemed more distant. Lisa Nguyen, who had always been quiet and compliant, now avoided his gaze altogether. Ethan's paranoia grew. He called Stephen Marsh into his office late one evening, his tone sharp and demanding. "Something's off," he said. "I don't like it." Stephen fidgeted nervously. "You think someone's onto us?" "I don't think I know," Ethan snapped. "Find out who it is, and deal with it." 2 days later, Charles convened an emergency board meeting. Amara, Lisa, and Jack were present, though they stayed in the background as Charles took the lead. The tension in the room was palpable as Charles presented the evidence against Ethan, including Amara's recording. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the board as the recording played. Ethan's voice was unmistakable, his arrogance on full display as he detailed the embezzlement scheme. When the recording ended, Charles turned to Ethan, his expression steely. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Ethan's face was a mask of fury and panic. He rose from his seat, his voice shaking with indignation. This is a setup. You're going to believe some nobody over me? She's been out to get me from the start. Enough, Charles said, his tone cutting through the noise. The evidence speaks for itself. You've betrayed this company, and you will face the consequences. As security escorted Ethan from the building, his eyes locked on Amara. The hatred in his gaze was palpable. A promise that this wasn't over. You think you've won? He spat as he passed her. You don't know who you're dealing with. Amara stood firm, her chin raised. Neither do you. With Ethan gone, the company began the arduous process of cleaning up the mess he had left behind. Charles publicly commended Amara for her bravery and integrity, calling her a model of resilience in the face of adversity. The recognition was bittersweet. While Amara had proven herself, she knew the battle had left scars on her reputation, her relationships, and her sense of security. The office was quieter now, but the whispers hadn't entirely disappeared. Some still questioned her rise, while others viewed her as a threat to the status quo. In the weeks following Ethan's downfall, Rachel Walker surprised Amara by approaching her with an unexpected gesture, an apology. I was wrong about you, Rachel admitted, her tone uncharacteristically sincere. You've got guts, and I respect that. Amara smiled faintly. Thanks, Rachel. That means a lot. Don't let it go to your head, Rachel added with a smirk. But there was no malice in her words. For the first time, Amara felt a genuine connection between them. Though Ethan was gone, Amara knew her journey was far from over. The corporate world was still rife with challenges, and the systemic biases she faced hadn't disappeared. But for the first time, she felt a sense of hope, a belief that she could not only survive but thrive. As she sat in her office one evening, reflecting on everything she had endured, her phone buzzed with a message from Charles. We need to discuss your future. Let's meet tomorrow. Amara's heart quickened. Her future was no longer a question of survival. It was a question of what she would build next. The fallout from Ethan's exposure lingered in the air like the remnants of a storm. While Harrison Enterprises worked to recover from the scandal, Amara found herself in the spotlight. Her role in uncovering the embezzlement had elevated her reputation among some but intensified skepticism in others. For Amara, it was a bittersweet victory, a moment of triumph tainted by lingering tensions. When Charles Harrison called her into his office, she felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Charles greeted her with his usual calm demeanor, but there was a spark of pride in his eyes. Miss Johnson, he began, gesturing for her to sit. You've proven yourself time and again under extraordinary circumstances. It's time we talk about your future. Amara straightened in her chair, her heart pounding. I'm listening. Charles leaned forward, his tone serious. The fallout from Ethan's actions has left a gap in leadership at one of our regional branches. We need someone who can rebuild trust and lead with integrity. I want you to take on that role. Amara's breath caught. You want me to manage a branch? Yes, Charles said. It won't be easy. The branch is struggling, and the team there is demoralized. But I believe you have what it takes to turn things around. The weight of the offer settled over her. It was an incredible opportunity, but also an immense responsibility. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say yes, Charles replied with a faint smile. You've earned it. That evening, Amara sat in her small apartment, weighing the decision. The promotion was everything she had worked for, but it came with risks. Could she handle the pressure? Would she be able to overcome the skepticism and resistance that had followed her at every step? Her mother, always perceptive, joined her at the kitchen table. You've got that look on your face, she said, pouring 2 cups of tea. What look? Amara asked with a small smile. The one you get when you're overthinking. Her mother chuckled softly. Whatever it is, you'll figure it out. You always do. Amara took a sip of her tea, the warmth soothing her nerves. Charles wants me to manage a branch. Her mother's eyes widened. That's amazing. Why do you look so worried? It's a lot, Amara admitted. I don't want to fail. You won't, her mother said firmly. You've been through worse, and you've come out stronger every time. Don't let fear hold you back. Her mother's words resonated, and by the time Amara went to bed, her mind was made up. The next morning, she called Charles and accepted the position. Amara's first day as branch manager was a whirlwind. The office she inherited was a far cry from the sleek headquarters of Harrison Enterprises. The building was older, the technology outdated, and the staff disillusioned after years of poor management. Her introduction to the team was met with polite but wary smiles. Among the employees were a few key figures. Monica Torres, the operations supervisor, who was efficient but guarded, her trust clearly hard-earned. Derek Cole, a junior logistics coordinator with potential but a tendency to second-guess himself. Angela Pratt, the receptionist, whose cheerful demeanor masked a deep frustration with the company's lack of support. Amara began her tenure by meeting with each team member individually, listening to their concerns and gaining insight into the branch's challenges. It was clear that morale was low, and productivity had suffered as a result. Amara wasted no time implementing changes. She focused on small but meaningful improvements, updating outdated processes, addressing equipment failures, and advocating for better resources from headquarters. She also made a point of recognizing the team's efforts, something they hadn't experienced under previous management. Her hands-on approach began to earn her respect, but not everyone was convinced. Monica remained skeptical, questioning whether Amara's success at headquarters translated to real leadership skills. "You've got good ideas," Monica said during a tense meeting. "But ideas don't mean much if you can't deliver." Amara met Monica's gaze, her tone steady. "I'm not here to just make promises. Give me a chance, and I'll prove to you that I can deliver." As Amara worked to stabilize the branch, she stumbled upon another issue: discrepancies in the branch's financial records. The errors were subtle, buried in layers of paperwork, but they pointed to a pattern of missing funds. Amara's instincts told her this wasn't a simple mistake. Someone within the branch was siphoning money, and the cover-up was sophisticated enough to suggest it had been happening for a long time. Instead of jumping to conclusions, Amara quietly began investigating. She enlisted Monica's help, framing it as an audit to ensure compliance with headquarters standards. Amara's proactive approach didn't sit well with everyone. Angela, the receptionist, had overheard whispers about the audit and assumed it was a ploy to root out incompetence. The rumor spread, creating tension among the staff. When Angela confronted Amara during a staff meeting, her frustration boiled over. "You say you're here to help us, but all you've done is make people nervous. How are we supposed to trust you?" Amara took a deep breath, keeping her composure. "I understand your concerns," she said, "but this audit isn't about blame. It's about understanding where things went wrong so we can fix them. I need your trust to make that happen." Angela's expression softened slightly, but the tension in the room remained. Amara knew it would take more than words to win over the team. Amara's persistence paid off when she and Monica uncovered a crucial piece of evidence: a series of unauthorized transactions linked to a former employee who had left the branch months earlier. The discovery was a turning point, not only for the investigation but also for Amara's standing with the team. "You were right," Monica admitted grudgingly. "You've got a good head for this stuff." "Thanks, Monica," Amara said with a smile. "But I couldn't have done it without you." As the branch began to stabilize, Amara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had faced sabotage, discrimination, and countless obstacles, but each challenge had made her stronger. Now, she was determined to turn this struggling branch into a model of success, not just for her own sake, but for the employees who deserved better. But even as she celebrated small victories, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that bigger challenges lay ahead. The corporate world was full of hidden pitfalls, and she knew better than to let her guard down. Amara's first months as branch manager were a test of endurance, strategy, and sheer willpower. The branch was slowly showing signs of improvement, but the road to success was riddled with obstacles. Each small victory was hard-won, but the weight of responsibility never left her shoulders. What kept her going was the knowledge that she was not just proving her worth to Harrison Enterprises, she was redefining what leadership could look like in a world that often underestimated people like her. Amara's leadership style was unlike anything the branch had seen before. She focused on building relationships, fostering collaboration, and empowering her team. Over time, the atmosphere began to shift. Monica Torres started to emerge as a trusted ally, taking on more responsibility and working closely with Amara to streamline operations. Derek Cole, once hesitant and insecure, flourished under Amara's mentorship, becoming a dependable logistics coordinator. Angela Pratt, initially one of Amara's harshest critics, began to soften, inspired by Amara's dedication and genuine concern for the staff's well-being. One of Amara's biggest breakthroughs came when she organized a team-building retreat, giving the employees a chance to bond outside the confines of the office. The retreat was a turning point, dissolving much of the lingering tension and strengthening the team's sense of unity. As the branch improved, so did its reputation. Clients who had once been wary of working with the branch began returning. Impressed by the turnaround, productivity soared, and for the first time in years, the branch exceeded its quarterly targets. Word of Amara's success reached headquarters, and Charles Harrison couldn't have been prouder. "You've done something remarkable," he told her during a surprise visit. "The board is taking notice." Amara smiled, but she remained humble. "It's not just me. The team made this happen." Charles nodded. "That's the mark of a true leader." Just as things seemed to be falling into place, a familiar shadow loomed on the horizon: Ethan Mitchell. Though he had been disgraced and removed from his position, Ethan had managed to leverage his connections to secure a role at a rival company. And he hadn't forgotten about Amara. Rumors began to circulate that Ethan's new company was targeting Harrison Enterprises, poaching clients and undercutting contracts. One of the branch's most important clients, Metricom Logistics, suddenly hinted at leaving, citing a more competitive offer from Ethan's firm. When Amara learned of the threat, her determination hardened. "We're not losing them," she told Monica. "Not without a fight." Amara arranged a meeting with Metricom's executives, determined to secure their loyalty. The meeting was tense, with Metricom expressing doubts about the branch's ability to deliver the same value as Ethan's firm. Amara leaned on her preparation and her team's recent successes. "We've turned this branch around," she said firmly. "Our numbers speak for themselves. And unlike our competitors, we prioritize relationships, not just profits. Metricom has been with us for years, and I intend to make sure that partnership continues to thrive." Her passion and authenticity resonated. By the end of the meeting, Metricom agreed to stay, contingent on a few key improvements that Amara promised to deliver. Ethan wasn't pleased when he learned that Metricom had stayed with Harrison Enterprises. He retaliated by launching a smear campaign, spreading rumors about Amara's past struggles at headquarters and questioning her qualifications. The rumors reached the branch, rattling the team. Derek approached Amara one afternoon, visibly upset. "Ethan's saying you were almost fired," he said. "Is it true?" Amara didn't flinch. "Yes," she said calmly, "but I fought back, and I'm here because I proved myself. Just like all of you have. Don't let his lies distract you from what we've accomplished." Her honesty and vulnerability strengthened the team's resolve. Together, they pushed forward, determined to prove Ethan wrong. As the branch prepared to launch a major project for Metricom, disaster struck. A critical shipment was delayed due to a supplier error, threatening the tight timeline Amara had promised. The team scrambled to find a solution, with Amara leading the charge. She called in favors, coordinated with backup suppliers, and worked late into the night to ensure the shipment was back on track. When the project launched successfully, Metricom's executives were so impressed that they signed a long-term contract with the branch, cementing its recovery. The Metricom victory was a blow to Ethan's ambitions, but his downfall came from within. His relentless tactics and unethical practices caught up with him when an employee at his firm blew the whistle on his illegal dealings. The ensuing investigation led to Ethan's public disgrace, ending his career once and for all. When Amara heard the news, she felt a mix of relief and vindication. Ethan's shadow no longer loomed over her, and she could finally focus on the future without looking over her shoulder. With the branch thriving and her team fully behind her, Amara began to think about the bigger picture. Her journey had shown her the power of resilience, integrity, and leadership, but it had also highlighted the systemic challenges that still plagued the corporate world. She approached Charles Harrison with an idea: a mentorship program to support underrepresented employees and create pathways for advancement. "We need to do more," she said, "not just for the company, but for the people who make it work." Charles agreed, and the program became a cornerstone of Harrison Enterprises' values. With Amara at the helm, Amara's story became a source of inspiration, not just within Harrison Enterprises but beyond. She proved that success wasn't about where you started but how you persevered. Her journey was a testament to the power of hard work, compassion, and unwavering determination. As she stood in her office one evening, looking out at the city skyline, Amara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced every challenge head-on, and while the road had been difficult, it had led her to a place of purpose and possibility. The future was hers to shape, and she was ready.